Claire Hoffman propels it across to Murphy. We're underway in set number 3. Robinson back set Mutiri. A diving effort by Powell. Now tapping it across is Washington over to Williams. Now Mutiri rises up and gets things started in set number 3 for the Ducks.
And it always just feels a little more energetic off the hand of Gloria Mutiri. It feels like she brings a little more oomph to her attacks, and it's been working so far for Oregon.
Reminds me a lot of Willow Johnson. The Ducks lose Willow Johnson a season ago, and Matt Ulmer says, all right, I'll pick up a left-handed assassin in the transfer portal. As the serve goes across, a quick set over to Grote. The Ducks sniff it out. Now Mutiri hangs it across, and that goes just a hair long, and it's 1-1. So 1 kill for Mutiri and 1 attack error for Mutiri, making it 1-1 here in set number 3.
And Sean, Gloria Mutiri doesn't only remind you of Willow Johnson, she also reminds Matt Ulmer of Willow Johnson. In the press conference earlier this week, he said the same thing.
Crenshaw across, a nice IQ play by Brooke Nuneviller to let it go as it goes long, 2-1 Ducks.
Here comes that rotation. Morgan Lewis, Elise Ferreira checking in, Kylie Robinson, Gloria Mutiri checking out. And this is what I think the peak of that 6-2 rotation can do for Oregon, even though they've dropped the first 2 sets.
Here's Elise Ferreira. She zips it across. Taken by Drexel. Powell pushes it left side. Ensley shoots it long, so the Ducks get off to a 3-1 start here in set number 3. And it's already looking promising in terms of what I was talking about to start this set. Is Oregon going to fold? Are they going to be demoralized? Doesn't look so far in set number 3. Ferreira lobs the ball over and delivers it across. Taken by Crenshaw. Bump set over towards Ensley off the block. Murphy, the pass to Ferreira quickly to Bacon in the middle. Drexel lays out for it. Now on the left side, Ensley pushes it towards Ferreira. Good defense by both sides. Bacon taps it across. Now Powell, left side. Ensley shoots it long once again. Couple of attack errors for Maddie Ensley. The Ducks defense holding strong, waiting for Washington to make mistakes, and it's been the true freshman making a couple of mistakes in a row.
Yeah, we've talked about Oregon's youth and how Washington is so experienced. Maddie Ensley is the sole freshman in this rotation for Washington, and she showed a few attacking errors early in set 3.
4-1, Ferreira slaps it across. Popped into the air by Crenshaw. Now on the left side, Ensley rises up once again. It's blocked. Washington resets. Back for Ensley from a far spot. Taken by Nuneviller. Ferreira quickly. A left-handed attack by Bacon. Easily sniffed out by Powell. Now nearly a joust at the net. Drexel pokes it across. Ferreira left side. Williams, a cut shot. It's inbounds. A quick start here in set number 3 for the Ducks. Leading 5-1. Keegan Cook wants to talk things over. Oregon spreading the wealth early and playing some crisp volleyball after losing the first 2.
They absolutely have, and Taylor Williams has had a really slow start to this match. Really the only one out of any of the attackers for really either side. But right there, she was able to identify exactly where the weakness in that Washington rotation is, and that's what the cut shot does so well. When the defense rotates to try to overload that strong side, going and crossing court on them, there are going to be weaknesses in that defense. Taylor Williams found it, and Oregon has been working early. I talked earlier, right before the start of this set, how the unforced errors were doing Oregon in. Early in set 3, it's been the unforced errors for Washington. Oregon on a 4-0 scoring run. 2 of those points off attack errors by Maddie Ensley. If Oregon can continue to force Washington into those mistakes, then it's not over yet for the Ducks.
So 5-1. Something we haven't touched on throughout this broadcast yet, Ryan, that I thought was really interesting. The last 6 times in Matthew Knight Arena, Washington's won all 6 of them without playing a 5th set. The last 3 in Eugene have been sweeps. But when Oregon goes to Washington, they play much better. Oregon has won at least 2 sets in each of the last 4 trips with 2 victories to show for it in Seattle. And you're seeing this trend continue as Washington holds a 2-0 lead. We'll see what happens here in set number 3. But it's just such an interesting, mind-boggling thing that Oregon just hasn't been playing the Huskies well at home at all.
Yeah, they really haven't, and that doesn't really bode well for the Ducks, but they're trying to change the fate right now as they're trying to continue rolling here in set 3.
Ferreira slaps it across. She's been serving really well. Crenshaw pops it up. Now the set over to Ensley, taken by Nuneviller. Williams hangs it across. It's blocked. The Ducks recover it nicely. Now Crenshaw passes to Powell. A back set to Drexel, and she takes out Nuneviller with some heat.
And that puts Samantha Drexel in double digits. She joins what has been an exclusive club of only Ducks so far, and she joins that Nuneviller, Mutiri, Lewis contingent.
Drexel whips it across to Nutteviller. Bacon, a beautiful dink shot right into the campfire for Carson Bacon. She's opening up her whole arsenal. We know how powerful she is, but that was poetic by Bacon.
Yeah, and it sort of seems like Carson Bacon has been caught by surprise on a few of those quick sets. Hasn't been getting power behind it. That time it worked, though.
Williams hangs the serve across to Drexel. Powell up in the air. Left side for Ensley. A beautiful dig by Georgia Murphy. Now from beyond the attack line, Williams taps it across. Back on Oregon side now. Ferreira quickly to Bacon. A whistle and an Oregon point. A net violation against the Huskies. It's 7-2 Oregon, and this was what was on Matt Ulmer's wish list. Get off to a quick lead and really control a set, and it looks that way so far. Barring a Washington run, this is going to be Oregon's set that they're kind of in control with a 5-point early lead. Williams propels it across. Drexel pops it up into the air. Back to Drexel from beyond the attack line. It hits the twine and into Ferreira's hands. Now Nutteviller hovers up, taps it across. Ensley lays out for it. Powell tripped over Ensley. Couldn't get there. It's 8-2 Oregon. This is exactly what the doctor ordered.
Hello and welcome into the KWVA studios. Sean McPherson here with you for a Sports Desk update. Let's get it rolling. We'll start in the National Basketball Association tonight as the Milwaukee Bucks defeated the Minnesota Timberwolves 130-105, led by Chris Middleton's 27 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists. It was the 6th straight game in which Giannis Antetokounmpo sat out, but the Bucks continue to roll. They are now 34-20. The Cleveland Cavaliers defeated the Charlotte Hornets 103-90, led by Taurean Prince's 25 points and 4 rebounds. A big showdown in the East as the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets played for the right to be first place in the Eastern Conference. Both came into this one 37-17. And the Philadelphia 76ers get the win 123-117. No James Harden and no Kevin Durant, but Kyrie Irving provided 37 points and 9 assists, but Joel Embiid was too much to handle. He had 39 points and 13 rebounds. A couple more games here. The Toronto Raptors defeated the San Antonio Spurs 117-112. DeMar DeRozan had a nice game against his former team, 19 points, 11 assists, but Pascal Siakam also had a double-double, 20 points and 11 rebounds. Last game that's gone final so far today, the Los Angeles Clippers defeated the Detroit Pistons on the road 100-98 behind Reggie Jackson's game-winning shot against his former team. Jackson had 29 points and 6 rebounds. Let's move over to the Diamond as Oregon had a midweek showdown against Portland up north, and the Ducks dominated the Portland Pilots 18-1. They were led by a 9-run third inning. Kenyon Yovan provided 3 RBIs for the Ducks, 3 hits and 2 runs. Bryce Betcher provided a couple of RBIs as well, and there was 6 RBIs by the shortstop Josh Kasevich. So Oregon, number 14 in the country, they go on and move to 20-7. They're 6-3 in the conference. They're tied for first in the Pac-12 conference. The Ducks have been rolling, and they'll look to continue to do so with a weekend showdown series against USC over in LA. Lastly, Oregon women's volleyball will start their NCAA tournament journey tomorrow with a matchup against Notre Dame. The Ducks finished their regular season 14-4. They finished second in the Pac-12 conference, and they will play the runner-up in the ACC conference, Notre Dame, who was 15-3 on the season. That should be a fun showdown in the round of 32. The winner of that one will get the winner of Purdue and High Point, and KWVA will be on the call for that one, myself and Ryan Milano. But that's going to do it for my Sports Desk update. I've been Sean McPherson. Let's now get it back to Jordan Brenner and Bill Breaker over at the Morse Event Center for the second half between Bushnell and Multnomah.
All right, we're bringing on the assistant sports director from KWVA Sports. It's Sean McPherson talking Oregon women's basketball. Sean, let's start with the most pressing story. Taylor Chavez, Jazz Shelley transferring out of the program. Tell me where that leaves Oregon women's basketball and take me into that decision that those two women made.
Sure. So Jazz Shelley's leaving the program after 2 years. She's heading to Nebraska. Taylor Chavez played on this team for 3 seasons. She's heading to Arizona. And, you know, Jordan, before this interview, I did some digging on why did these players leave? And I came to the conclusion that Kelly Graves, I think every offseason, is radically transparent with all of his players. He's not afraid to tell his players you're not quite good enough to start next season. Or I'll be honest, there's some players in the depth chart that are a little bit better than you. And that's just the way I'm thinking right now for next year's roster. And I mean, you go back and you look at players that departed, very talented players. 2019, Holly Winterburn, Lucy Cochran, they leave that team after just one season, very solid freshman campaigns. 2017, they lose the likes of Ina Ayuso, Sierra Campuzano, Mallory McGuire. I mean, none of these players warm the bench. I mean, these are players that are in the rotation, but I think Kelly Graves is not afraid to tell them, like, hey, you might be better elsewhere, and credit to Kelly Graves for doing that.
Let's go into the run that Oregon just made. I think it was, in a way, a huge success that they get to the Sweet 16. They were in a free fall towards the end of Pac-12 play. They managed to get to the Sweet 16, but still miles short of what we've seen from Oregon women's basketball in recent history. So let me ask you, why did the Ducks fall short? What were they lacking this season?
They were miles short. You're certainly correct about that. They make it to the Sweet 16, but they beat Georgia 57-50, a very ugly game in the round of 32. And then it was very ugly against Louisville, 60-42. They lose. Only scoring 42 points is kind of the story of their entire season. This is a team that all season long struggled offensively, especially in the later half of the season. So they had a really bad loss against Arizona about in the middle of the season. They lose that 57-41. I would argue it was one of the darker moments in recent program history. And Kelly Graves had a very fiery press conference after that. And you look at the stats from before that game and after that game, Oregon averaged 83 points per game in the first 11 games of the season. Only 2 of those were non-conference, so it's not like the opponents were super easy. The second half of the season, after that Arizona game, they averaged 62 points per game in the last 12 games of the season. One of those was non-conference. So I'd argue that the schedule was pretty even, but I think that the fact that this team's makeup was a lot of role players in the Sabrina Ionescu era, like Taylor Chavez, Erin Boley, Jazz Shelley, and then a lot of young players that were brand new to college basketball, I think they just wore down throughout the entire season. I think some teams figured them out, and this team really struggled to score as the year went on.
So Oregon is coming off the best days in program history with Ionescu, with Hebert, with Satu Sabali. But historically, it's not like Oregon is a blue blood. Not nearly. They aren't like UConn, where they've had decades of success. I think that begs the question, can Kelly Graves get back there? Can Oregon get back to competing truly for a national championship?
I say yes, but I think it's going to be in a different way because Sabrina Ionescu's do not grow on trees. I don't think Oregon is out there searching for their next Sabrina Ionescu or searching for their current version of Paige Beckers or Caitlin Clark. Instead, I think Kelly Graves is utilizing the fact that they nearly won a national championship several years in a row with Sabrina Ionescu as the face of their squad. And so the year after, or the recruiting season after Ionescu leaves, he brings in 5 five-star recruits. And this year he brings in 2 very talented recruits. And I think that's the mold that Oregon's going for. They're not trying to win on the backs of a couple star players. They're not trying to be like UConn right now and have 2 of the best players in the country. Instead, they're trying to have a very physical roster and a very deep roster, and which the bench isn't a liability at all. He can bring in, he can rely on 8 to 10 players to be out there in crunch time. I think he's just trying to create a well-rounded team that can be good for the long term and not rely on having 1 star player like he had Ionescu for several years.
Let's talk about the program moving forward. Who is Oregon next year? Who is Oregon the next 3-4 years?
Oregon's going to be very big next year. I think instead of guard play like they had Ionescu and Sabali, they're going to rely on their bigs. They have Sedona Prince, a 6'7" player who I thought played her best basketball at the tournament. They have Naira Sabali, who maybe was Oregon's best player this season. She's a 6'5" player. And then they bring in a freshman, a 6'8" player in Filipina Kaye. She's the tallest player in program history from Canada. She ended her commitment video with a dunk. And then they have a lot of guards who they're just relying on improving from last season. You talk about the likes of Sydney Parrish, Maddie Shear, Tahina Paupau, who is their starting point guard all season long. And then they bring in the number 29 recruit in Taylor Bigby. So sure, Oregon departs 4 key players, Giomi, Boley, Shelley, and Chavez. but I think this roster is going to be very deep, and I think it's going to be very big.
Sean McPherson, the assistant sports director from KWVA. Sean, thanks, buddy.
Appreciate it, Jordan.